Hey folks, I'm Wade from the Shoemakers Academy. Hey, today we're going to try something a little different. I'm going to walk you through not exactly how to design a hiking boot, but what really you're going to see inside of a hiking boot, kind of like sort of the inside out guts of it. This is what our website looks like. If you, the material I'm going to talk to you about is actually in our book, Shoe Material Design Guide. So if you go over here to Books and Tools, you can get a look at our textbooks, and this is the one I'm talking about here. This is the Shoe Material Design Guide. The shoe we're actually talking about happens to be on the cover of the book. Here it is. Hey, let's go take a look. So here we go. We have this. This is a medium hiker. Pretty pretty robust actually. It's got a sheet cut EVA midsole, high density, and it's got a scratch rubber toe cap that goes all the way around, covers both sides. I really like this boot because it's quite sleek. You'll notice the lacing position is almost all holes down here. You know, holes like this, they're grippy. They don't allow the lace to move so easily, which is good because you want to be able to sort of customize this area and make it nice and tight and fit you perfectly, right? So again, material wise, nothing fancy here, right? This is all suede leather. Like I said, a die cut midsole here. The bottom is Vibram, which is nice. Um, this actually has a Gore-Tex membrane, and I'll show you that in a second. But a few things about this. First thing you notice, it's got a lot of toe spring on it, and because this boot is so firm, and for rough ground or carrying a heavy pack, you know, the rougher, the heavier, the stronger your sole needs to be, and but you're going to need to have a little bit of natural rock motion in it, right? Because if this thing is really stiff and flat, it's hard to walk. So because it actually has a little bit more toe spring, it gives you a little bit more lift and it lets you walk comfortably in it, despite the fact that it's actually a pretty stiff boot. Okay, so enough of that stuff. The other thing I like about this is it's got a low heel on it, but there's no sharp edge. So there's enough surface area here to help you brake as you're going downhill, but not enough to snag. And the other thing I like about this is the outsole is relatively narrow. It doesn't stick out, so basically you're not going to catch or snag on rocks or trees as you go by or branches or whatever. The other thing about this is it's got really nice sharp corners here. And if you're walking sort of off camber or trying to dig in along a high angle surface, then that'll really help you stay on. Okay, so that's the outside of this thing. Again, like lots of positions. I'm not super excited about this metal eyelet in textile. I mean, the back of the rivet here, you can see this ring. That's actually nice, right? It's a wider. The edge on this side, it looks a little skinny. Inside construction looks okay, but on the outside, not the best. But overall, really nice looking deal here. But let's look on the inside. So first things first, this is a Gore-Tex boot. So here's what they've done. Now they've created a gusset tongue, right? So this is fully gusseted. You can see the eyelet holes here, but also because this gusset is covered now, water can't get in, right? Now we'll flip to the back side of it, and this is one of the things when you're buying a waterproof boot, is you want to look inside and just see how tall it is, right? This boot, it's waterproof, you know, about 4 or 5 inches, pretty good for not actually a really high boot. Okay, so now we're looking inside, and we've got the Gore-Tex sock. So that's how these boots are made. Is the waterproof membrane is constructed and then it hangs inside the boot. So it looks like a strobo sock here, right? You've got the stitching here, but this is actually a separate unit that is constructed apart from the shoe, right? It's connected at the top line of the shoe, right? But once you get past this line, there's no stitching, right? Except when you get to where it's glued down on the bottom and it's sealed. So what that does is that allows the membrane to hang inside the boot and not get pierced, but also the stitching that's on the outside of the boot doesn't pierce the membrane. That's the idea. Um, okay, so that's what the membrane looks like. Now, let's pull the membrane out and get a look at what's going on inside the shoe. So, first things first, I quite like what's going on here. I mean, I know it looks a little bit like a glued up mess, but what we've got here is, first of all, we've got a piece of super tough. So this silver strip here that goes all down the eye stay with the holes punched in it. This material is really quite strong. So if you put a shoelace through that hole and try to break it, it won't break. So that's good news. The next thing we're looking at is the toe counter, right? And that's the material inside underneath that rubber that makes the toe of the boot nice and stiff. So this basically lets you kick rocks or kick trees or whatever and not have your toes get mashed. The other thing about, we talked about how this lacing system, comes quite close to the toe. It lets you get enough pressure on the top of your foot so when you're going downhill, your toes aren't jamming into the end of the boot, because this is pretty firm. So you really want to keep your toes held back from that. So this lacing system really allows that. So nice feature. Next thing we're going to see is this thing is board lasted, which is cool. So you can see where the upper material is pulled around underneath the board on the front and the back. Okay. And the lasting board here is, it's got two paper layers, one on the top, one on the bottom, and then a firm plastic layer in the middle. The paper actually allows the whole thing to be glued, and the plastic is what gives the support, right? The glue, the paper glue absorbs the glue, which holds everything together. Perfect. Now, we talked about the toe counter, right? Now we're looking at the heel counter. You can see how the edge of it's sky, and this is a really nice and firm heel counter. And this heel cup, because it's nice and 3D and molded, this really is nice and supportive. You're not going to bust your ankle. It's going to hold you in well. You're looking for that kind of feature in a hiking boot like this. If this is too soft, you're not going to stay in, and not so good. Okay. The other thing that we see here is that they've got canvas glued to the back of all the suede pieces. And why did they do that? Well, they do that because if this suede gets wet, and it will, because this is a waterproof boot, that the suede will stretch. So if you back it with canvas and you stitch those two layers together, that the canvas, even though it's not waterproof, it can hold the waterproof leather and stop it from stretching. Because once this thing gets all wet, it could turn into a real sloppy mess. However, this canvas doesn't stretch even if it gets wet. That's the whole idea. So that's why it's all stitched and glued together. So internally, this thing is pretty nicely made. I mean, again, I know it doesn't look great, but when you run your hands in here, it's relatively smooth, and you're looking for that so that the inside of the boot itself doesn't snag on the waterproof membrane and damage it. The other thing we notice here, again, how stiff this is. And we're looking at the cross section of the rubber and the EVA. They've got some flex grooves in the front. That's nice. And you can see how much toe spring this has, right? You see what the straight line, and that gives you the rocking motion. That's good. Now, looking at the outsole, we're looking at two things here. This is a Vibram unit, so that's high quality unit for sure. Is the depth of the lugs, maybe 4 or 5 millimeters. That's good. But the other surface here is the web, right? So that's the flat part of the bottom of it. The lugs stick out of the web. The web on this is relatively thick, and I like that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you ever want to replace it, right? This is a long wearing unit. It'll last longer, but you still be able to actually scrape the rubber off the EVA and replace it. But having the extra thickness of web just stops anything from poking through, right? And it'll just allow this thing to wear nice and long. So again, hey, I'm not trying to, I know we're not able to teach you how to be a hiking boot designer, but this boot, for being a medium hiker, does pretty well, right? It's relatively sturdy, so therefore it has a nice toe spring, so you can still walk in it. It's not made of any exotic materials, but the geometry of how it's put together with the lacing system, the firm heel counter, the reinforcing, the way the gusset's constructed, this is actually a really nicely done boot. All right, so this is actually a really nicely done boot. So this is actually a really nicely done boot. Again, like I said, this product is covered in the shoe material design guide. Here it is right here. If you really want to get a good look at all the guts of what's going on in this thing, we've taken this cross section and if we've detailed what all the outside material is and what all the inside materials. Now you've seen behind the liner, so you've got even more, even more of a look of what's going on inside of it. So, bonus for you. Hey, this is what we do at Shoemakers Academy. We basically kind of want to show you how it's done. Um, you know, basically come to the website, check it out. Here, over here, you see online courses. I'm going to show you our course catalog. Here it is. Whether you're a designer, a developer, or a brand builder, we have a course for you. Uh, basically, if you're just a beginner and you want to start shoemaking for brand builders and designers, awesome place to start. If you want to dig a little deeper and learn about creating specifications or how to select shoe materials, that's all here in the Shoe Material Design Guide, and we have multiple courses for that. If you want to start your own business, we have a course specially for that. Listen, if you are going to create and actually it goes on to all the other specifics: cost engineering, quality, duty, what is factory about, how to use Photoshop to communicate in a footwear world, comfort, pretty important, footwear import, those kinds of things, pretty important stuff to know. So we have a whole bunch of courses, and if you basically, or you want to go all in, I would suggest you check out the All Access Pass. So that gives you access to all the course material and all the books. It's fantastic, for compared to the tuition of a community college or university. It's a drop in the bucket. Anyways, so hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed our talk about hiking boots. And if you ever get it, as a designer, if you have a hiking boot project, across your desk, well, then you at least sort of know the basics about how to get it done. So we appreciate that. Hey, thanks a lot. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're watching this on the Shoemakers Academy website, hey, go check out the blog and of course check out the course material. Thank you.